Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's live on Twitter, following us at Ticket1430. Maybe you're watching via YouTube. Head over there, search for Indy's Sports Ticket, and subscribe. Join the chat. Let me know your thoughts on all of the various things that I say. Maybe you're listening the old-fashioned way, in your car, on the radio, 1430 AM, or maybe you're streaming us live on the Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download on the App Store or the Google Play Store, The Real Jonathan Smith Show. I have to start with something that really, I wouldn't say it upset me, but it definitely grabbed my attention and did not make me excited. So Yahoo Sports is, it's a publication. I don't read it a ton, but from time to time, they will release things that I do read. And this writer by the name of Tom Haberstroh of Yahoo Sports wrote something that I had to go read. He did an entire thing on Michael Jordan's 1988 Defensive Player of the Year season. He went back, he took a closer look, and he raised some questions about it. And anytime you raise questions about the greatest basketball player to ever live, I have to read it. I have to see what your questions are, especially when it comes to Michael Jordan's 1988 Defensive Player of the Year season. Because this season, the only year ever a player has both won the scoring title and won Defensive Player of the Year, this season has played a role in the GOAT debate. Okay, this Defensive Player of the Year award gives Michael Jordan something that LeBron James doesn't have. It gives him something that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar doesn't have. It gives him something that Magic Johnson doesn't have. Recognition of being the league's best defender for a single season. And what Haberstroh finds is very interesting. He went back, he looked through old box scores, he watched old games, and he interviewed a man by the name of Alex Rucker. Alex Rucker used to be the scorekeeper for the Vancouver Grizzlies, right? Started in the 95-96 season working for the Grizzlies when they were an expansion team. And in the interview, Rucker admits that he used to juice the Grizzlies stats during home games. And as he's explaining this, he then goes on to say that every scorekeeper juiced their home team stats during home games. This is what he claims. That leads us to the basis of Haberstroh's argument, where Michael Jordan's home and road splits have quite the discrepancy. They're very different in that 1988 season. At home, Michael Jordan averaged 4 steals and 2 blocks a game. That's pretty good. That's pretty insane. But on the road, Michael Jordan's numbers shrunk to 2 steals and 1 block a game. So basically, he was twice the defender at home versus what he was on the road. It gets better. Michael Jordan's 10-steal game, right? I believe that is definitely the most in Bulls franchise history for a single game. I can't remember if the all-time NBA record is that 10 or if it's 11. I don't remember. But either way, 10 steals in a game is mightily impressive. That game is on YouTube. And if you go watch it, he only recorded 6 steals. Right? If you go back and you watch the tape, Michael Jordan only steals the basketball 6 times, but it was recorded as 10. And it was a home game. And another game that season, the scorekeeper gave Michael Jordan more steals than his opponent had live turnovers. And this didn't only happen once. It happened multiple times during the season. Once again, Haberstroh went back, he watched these games himself, he tracked the stats himself, and he had a buddy do the exact same thing to double-check his work. There is merit to the claim that Michael Jordan's defensive numbers that year in 1988, the year he won Defensive Player of the Year, there is merit to those numbers being juiced. I will not deny it. But here's the other thing. Every scorekeeper was apparently doing this. So everybody's numbers from that era were juiced. They were. It wasn't like he was the only player whose numbers were being juiced. Okay? And this is a season that's really important to the history of basketball, especially when we have the GOAT debate, because Michael Jordan, because of this season, has more defensive player of the years than LeBron James. But here's the truth of it. As important as this season is, because anytime that there's a season where it's the only time that something has happened, for example, Michael Jordan winning defensive player of the year and being the scoring champ, like that's a big deal. But from a GOAT debate standpoint, which is what all the LeBron fans have wanted to turn this conversation into, it's not a cornerstone of it. In terms of the GOAT debate, this holds no weight whatsoever. Because even if Michael Jordan hadn't won the 1988 Defensive Player of the Year, he would still be regarded as the greatest basketball player of all time by many. Because the heart, the cornerstone of the Michael Jordan is the GOAT argument, the cornerstone of it is that he won 6 titles in 6 tries with 6 finals MVPs. And as long as that still stands, which the last time I checked, it does, he is still going to be regarded as the greatest basketball player of all time by many. Even if he hadn't won Defensive Player of the Year in 1988, he was still a great defender. It doesn't change anything. Okay, sure, maybe Michael Jordan has an extra accolade he maybe shouldn't have. But once again, let me remind you, if all the scorekeepers were doing this, like Alex Rucker suggested in his interview, then everybody's numbers were juiced. Okay? But here's the thing. In terms of this 1988 Defensive Player of the Year award, it doesn't move the needle at all in terms of the greatest of all time debate. Because the primary argument for Jordan, 6 titles, 6 tries, 6 finals MVPs, those accolades still stand and are not in any sort of question whatsoever. Also, if this is going to be a big deal, if this is going to be a thing where we start questioning everything Michael Jordan ever did because the scorekeepers at that time during his home games boosted his stats, if this is going to be in question, then we now must go back and look at everyone who played during this era. We now have to ask questions like, is John Stockton really the all-time assist leader? Or did the Utah Jazz home scorekeeper just juice his numbers repeatedly? Is Wilt Chamberlain really the all-time leading rebounder? Or did the home scorekeeper for the Lakers and when he played in San Francisco, or did those scorekeepers just boost his numbers? Like, are we really going to go back and ask all these questions? Because I don't think that we are. If people are going to question the 1988 Defensive Player of the Year award in a season where, sure, Michael Jordan's numbers were probably boosted based off of the evidence that Harbaugh gives in his Yahoo article. If we're going to question it, therefore we must question everything else that happened during that era. And I don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. The only people that want to do that are LeBron James fans, because they know in their heart of hearts that Michael Jordan truly is the greatest basketball player to ever pick up the rock. Moving on, JJ Reddick. JJ Reddick. Let's get off that Michael Jordan stuff. Okay, let's not change history. Okay, like this is what happened. I get that LeBron fans don't like it, but you know what, LeBron fans, you guys can be happy about this. JJ Reddick is the new Lakers head coach. This isn't surprising at all. Okay, but before Dan Hurley even came into the conversation, everyone knew that this was going to happen at some point. The idea of Danny Hurley leaving UConn to go be the coach of the Lakers was cool for like 5 seconds, and then people sobered up and they realized he's not going to leave UConn. Not for the Lakers, maybe for, the Knicks or maybe for the 76ers, but not for the Lakers. He's not going to move away from the Northeast unless he absolutely has to. So not at all surprising that yesterday JJ Reddick was officially hired as the Lakers head coach. Some people don't like the hire. I don't really mind it. Like the podcast thing to me, not that big of a deal. I don't think that it is. And part of that is because the most important thing for any head NBA coach is that the star of whatever team they are coaching on buys into whatever they are selling. For example, the reason why Rick Carlisle is the head coach of the Indiana Pacers is for 2 reasons. One, Tyrese Halliburton is buying into everything that Rick Carlisle is selling. Number 2, when Rick Carlisle was in Dallas, Luka Doncic was not buying into everything that Rick Carlisle was selling. And that's why he's here now. It's a star-driven league. Stars hold all the power. especially when it comes to head coaches. And in watching that podcast, because I watch it, I listen to it, I find it fascinating. I feel like I learn something every time I tune in. Through watching that, LeBron James is going to buy into whatever JJ Reddick says the Lakers should do. The respect that LeBron James has for JJ Reddick is obvious. It's clear. It's plain as day. Okay, he wouldn't be doing an X's and O's type of podcast if he didn't think that JJ Reddick was smart. He wouldn't be doing this if he didn't think that JJ Reddick had a good basketball mind. He wouldn't do this with him if he didn't think that JJ Reddick knew and understood the game of basketball. The other thing is, JJ Reddick's smart. I know people don't like it when he calls games. I personally don't mind it. Whenever he calls games, I expect to learn something new. Okay? Every time I listen to his podcast as well, I expect to learn something new. And most of the times, I do learn something. Okay, JJ Reddick is plenty smart enough to coach at the NBA level. That is not the question about this hire. The concern with the hire is that JJ Reddick has never coached before, but he played in the league for 15 years, okay? During his time playing basketball, through his entire life, he played for multiple good coaches. In college, he played for Mike Krzyzewski, Coach K, one of the greatest college basketball coaches of all time, whether you like him or not. Okay, I guarantee you that he learned things from Coach K that he is going to use as the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. Okay, when he was in the NBA, he played for multiple good coaches, including Stan Van Gundy, Doc Rivers, Brett Brown, and Rick Carlisle. No matter how you feel about all of those coaches, they have all been successful. And once again, I guarantee you that JJ Reddick learned different things from being in that locker room. Okay, I guarantee you. And because JJ Reddick has played for so many different coaches with so many different players, he's going to be well equipped. There will not be a situation that he hasn't seen, whether that's from, whether that's an in-game type of scenario or it's an off the court, this player doesn't like this other player type of scenario. And back in 2022, Taylor Rooks of Bleacher Report did a sit-down interview with JJ Reddick where she asked him why he would be a good NBA coach. And here's what new Lakers coach JJ Reddick had to say 2 years ago about why he would be a good coach.
I don't necessarily think it's one thing. I feel like I know the game pretty well because of some coaches I played for, really specifically Coach K. He taught me about adaptability. And our game, the NBA, changes so fast year to year. Having the mindset of just being open to change. One of my greatest skills as a human being is my ability to communicate and communicate in an open and transparent way. I did that as a teammate. I think that's part of coaching, not avoiding things and not avoiding confrontation. Locker rooms, team chemistry, it's a very fragile thing. We see it all the time in the NBA. I look at coaching as a way to help. It's like I had so many people help me in my career, and not just head coaches, but assistant coaches, player development people. And they have such a valuable place in my heart and in my life. And I'd love to be one of those people someday.
That was JJ Reddick discussing why he would be a good NBA coach 2 years ago with Taylor Rooks of Bleacher Report. And I have to be honest, I love his response, especially the part where he talks about adaptability. Because once again, JJ Reddick is right. The NBA changes every single year. It does. Okay, teams just watched how the Boston Celtics went on a run and won the finals. The NBA, like the NFL, is a copycat league. Teams are now going to change their teams to either try and do what the Celtics did, or they're going to adjust their roster to try and stop what the Celtics did. We saw the Timberwolves do that this year. They added bigs to help try and slow down Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets, and it worked. We also saw the Rockets start to run their offense through a good passing center, like how the Nuggets do with Jokic. The league changes every single year, and having a coach that understands that is important. JJ Reddick does. He played in the NBA for 15 years. From the time that he was drafted to the time that he retired, the league changed a lot, okay? And he was able to adapt his game to stay in the league. If he can do it as a player, then I don't see why he couldn't do it as a coach. We have also seen former players get hired as head coaches before with no prior experience. Okay, like this isn't a new thing. Steve Nash was hired by the Nets in 2020. He wasn't a bad coach. He just had to coach James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving, and none of them wanted to play basketball for whatever reason when they were in Brooklyn. That's a tough job. I thought he did a good job. In spite of that, Kevin Durant having smaller feet away from appearing in the Eastern Conference Finals. So I didn't think that Steve Nash was that bad of a coach, but I digress on that. Steve Kerr was also hired with no prior coaching experience, and he's doing a great job. He's one of the best coaches in the NBA. To be fair, for every Steve Kerr, for every new head coach that has never coached before that played, there is a Derek Fisher who was hired by the Knicks, and he was terrible. Okay? So we've seen former players that have never coached before come in and be great. We have seen former players that now coach come in and be awful. When it comes to JJ Reddick, though, I think he will be closer to Steve Kerr than Derek Fisher. Okay, he's not going to be Steve Kerr. I just think he's going to lean that way more so than lean the Derek Fisher way of not coaching for very long. For one, the reason why I say that is because he does get to coach LeBron James and Anthony Davis for a couple of years. That always helps when you have good players to coach right out of the gate. From a personality perspective, though, because that's really what matters, it's clear that he understands basketball enough to coach in the NBA. I don't think anybody is going to question that aspect of his coaching ability. He is clearly smart enough. He clearly understands basketball well enough to coach at the NBA level. But when it comes to his personality, I think that he checks a lot of boxes. He's driven. Like, you don't have the success in media that he's had without being driven. He's clearly intelligent. He's the only former player who has a podcast that I listen to, because when he does interviews, he asks smart questions. So he is intelligent. He is a major competitor. You don't play in the NBA for 15 years unless you are competitive. And he is meticulous in his attention to detail. Okay? When you listen to how he runs his podcast and how involved he is at ESPN, he is involved in every single aspect of it. His attention to detail is there. And I think that these are the qualities that some of the best head coaches in the NBA have. And these are the qualities that are going to lead JJ Reddick into being a good NBA head coach. With that being said, there will obviously be rough stretches for JJ Reddick throughout the season because he's never coached before. That's why he should 1,000% coach the Lakers Summer League team. Okay, it's going to give him an opportunity to figure out how he wants to run practice. It's going to give him opportunities on how to manage an actual in-game scenario. Okay, I doubt that he'll coach the Lakers Summer League team because that's just not something that guys do. But I think that would be the best thing for him going into coaching the most prominent franchise in the NBA. With that being said, short break coming up here in about 4 minutes. Funless Friday. We're going to piggyback off of this JJ Reddick thing. I had a scenario come into my head last night that I just think would be fantastic. So Funless Friday coming up next here in about 4 minutes.
Join the free smoothie party at Tropical Smoothie Cafe on June 21st for National Smoothie Day. We're treating our Tropic Rewards members to a free smoothie with bowl or food purchase. Order in-app, online, or pop by the cafe for a little sip and chill. 3 cheers to our Tropic fam. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket, also live on the Indy Sports Ticket YouTube page. Head over there, subscribe. Also live on Twitter as well if you want to follow us there at Ticket1430. You can follow me too. Why not? At _ Jonathan Smith. If you would like to tell me how wrong I am on these various things. So just finished talking about JJ Reddick and him being hired by the Lakers. And I mentioned that because it plays into today's Funless Friday. Today's Funless Friday is my NBA offseason edition, the funniest things that could happen this summer. Here's how the idea came about. I'm sitting down, I'm prepping through JJ Reddick to the Lakers. And then I just start laughing. And my wife, Amelia, she's sitting there by me. She's like, Jonathan, what's so funny? I was like, I just think it would be hysterical if LeBron pounds the table for the Lakers to hire his podcast buddy, JJ Reddick, just for Bronny James to be drafted by the Phoenix Suns or the Dallas Mavericks or whoever, and LeBron James leaves. That, to me, would be the funniest possible thing that could happen this summer. And it led me down a rabbit hole of what are some other funny things that could potentially happen this offseason? So number one, LeBron James could leave the Lakers after getting JJ Reddick hired as the new head coach. Okay, Bronny could get drafted by the Suns. If that happens, LeBron James opts out of his contract, goes down to Phoenix, and he plays for the Suns this year after getting JJ Reddick hired to the Lakers. If the Mavericks draft Bronny James, because they too have shown some interest, then LeBron James could potentially opt out of his Lakers contract and go play for the Dallas Mavericks. It would be the funniest thing in the world to me if LeBron James did everything he could to get JJ Reddick hired as the Lakers' new head coach just for him to leave. Especially if I'm wrong about JJ Reddick. What if LeBron gets JJ Reddick hired, then leaves to go play with his son, and JJ Reddick is an awful head coach? Lakers fans would be so upset. They would be so upset. I think it'd be hilarious. That's honestly what I hope happens. I hope someone other than the Lakers drafts Bronny James 5 or 6 days from now, and we see LeBron James not play for the Lakers after they just hired JJ Reddick. The next thing, same thing here, sticking with the NBA draft. The Celtics could draft Bronny James. Just speaking of LeBron leaving the Lakers, what if Brad Stevens decided to draft Bronny James? LeBron has made it clear that he doesn't like the Celtics. Okay, never has, never will. And I don't think he would go play there, even if they had his son on his team. And full disclosure here, Bill Simmons mentioned this on his podcast, so I want to give him credit. But what if the Celtics drafted Bronny James and used him as a trade piece? That would be even funnier. There's no way that Brad Stevens would do that. But just imagine with, the 30th pick of the first round, the Boston Celtics select Bronny James. And then as soon as they draft him, he picks up the phone and he calls the Lakers and he's like, hey, we want next year's first round pick for Bronny James. Okay? We'll send him over to you, but you have to send us a first round pick or a second round pick or this player. That would be so funny. Because let's be honest, when we look at this Boston Celtics roster, whoever they draft is not going to crack the rotation because the Celtics are so deep. They're bringing everybody back from last year. So why not draft Bronny James and see if the Lakers will send you a rotational piece in return? Because you know that LeBron is going to do everything he can to get his son Bronny on the Lakers if the Celtics draft him. That would be the ultimate leverage for the Celtics. It'd be funny. I think it'd be great. There's no way that Brad Stevens does that. But to me, that would be just the funniest thing ever. Now, when it comes to my next one, this too I think would be funny. James Harden could go back to Philadelphia to play for the Philadelphia 76ers. Once again, this is my Funless Friday, funniest things that could happen in the NBA offseason, the summer edition. Last summer, James Harden wanted a big-time contract extension from the 76ers. He didn't get it, so he demands a trade. While demanding a trade, he decides to go on tour. James Harden went on a Daryl Morey and Philadelphia 76ers hate tour. Do you remember when James Harden called Daryl Morey a liar in front of a bunch of kids in at his basketball camp in China? That was awkward. But imagine if after all of that, imagine after ripping Daryl Morey for an entire summer, imagine if James Harden went back to the 76ers. Daryl Morey loves the guy. He's sworn by him. Okay, and I don't know if the Clippers are going to give James Harden the money that he wants. Meanwhile, the 76ers have 9 open roster spots and all the money in the world. Okay, just because of it. And when you look at this year's free agency class, there's not a lot of options. There's Paul George, there's James Harden. Those might be the 2 best players on the open market this year. And look, it's a long shot. I don't think James Harden wants to go back there, but if the 76ers are the only place that have the cap space and the money available to pay him, then I think that he would. And that would be one of the craziest and funniest things ever. But I still wouldn't rule out the potential of James Harden going back to play for the 76ers. Next on the list. This in and of itself would not be funny, but the reaction of the fans down the road would be. Paul George could return to the Pacers this year. And every time I get on Twitter, there are Pacer fanboys hoping and praying and tweeting out all these different things about how they hope that Paul George will resign with the Indiana Pacers this offseason. I don't want it to happen. I hope and pray that the Indiana Pacers do not, under any circumstance, bring back Paul George. Okay? But for him to come back and suck would be one of the funniest things. Pacer fans appear to romanticize Paul George since he helped the Pacers compete against the Miami Heat and LeBron James and those dudes way back in the day. Let's be honest, though. He's 34. He's not that guy anymore. That's the nice way to put it. He also doesn't fit the timeline of the Pacers because he's 34. He's also very expensive. He's not worth the money that he's going to want because he'll be the 3rd best player. He will be the 3rd option behind Siakam and Halliburton. Okay, he's not worth the max money that he's going to ask for. But it'd be funny to see him come here, watch all these Pacer fans get super excited just for him to disappear in the playoffs like he's done consistently since leaving Indiana. He hasn't appeared in a conference finals since he left Indiana. He was eliminated in the first round this year, was eliminated in the second round last year. Like he hasn't had playoff success since leaving the Pacers. And a large part of why he hasn't had playoff success is because he hasn't been good in the playoffs. Okay? He hasn't been. And I think it'd be funny for him to come back here, be terrible, and watch all these Pacer fans that still love him currently. I just think it'd be funny to watch all of them turn on him. Pacers, Pritchard, I know you're listening. Do not bring Paul George back. I don't think they would, but that's just kind of how it is. Next, last one here. I also think it'd be funny if the number 1 overall pick this year spent time in the G League. I think that is a legitimate thing that could happen. I'm talking about the NBA draft a fairly decent amount today. I'm going to be joined by Parker Flemming, who writes a Substack. He's going to join me. We're going to talk about the NBA draft. I know before he comes on, I'm going to give you my thoughts on some of the players that I like and some of the players that I have some questions about. So I am talking NBA draft. And as you know, I've crammed over these past few days trying to get up to date because the NBA draft is in 5 days. I want to know what I'm talking about. It's bad. Worst draft since 2013 when Anthony Bennett went number 1 overall. I'm actually going to ask Parker later if he thinks this draft class is worse than that one. Because this draft class is terrible. Okay? When talking about it, you have to preface it with, don't think of this draft starting with the number 1 overall pick. Think that you're starting at like pick 9. Okay? Because there aren't any superstars in this draft whatsoever. And it is not uncommon to watch players that get drafted 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th overall spend time in the G League. Look at Jarris Walker, 8th overall pick by the Indiana Pacers last year. Where did he spend time this year? In the G League. Koulibaly, the guy who went to the Wizards 1 pick before the Pacers. Guess what? He spent time in the G League this year. It is not uncommon for some of these rookies, even if they're taken in the lottery, to spend time in the G League. And I wouldn't be surprised, and I'd find it absolutely hysterical if the number 1 overall pick this year spent time in the G League. Now, a place where that doesn't happen is the WNBA. And this year's number 1 overall pick, Caitlin Clark, suits up tonight for the Indiana Fever. They're taking on the Atlanta Dream at 7:30, nationally televised game on Eon, however you pronounce the channel. I'm going to talk about that when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Just wrapped up Funless Friday. I had an absolute blast doing it. As always, talking a lot of NBA draft, especially here coming up in the second hour. We've got Parker Flemming, a writer on Substack, who's going to join me coming up here in about 20 minutes. He's been looking into this stuff for a while because he's a Grizzlies fan, and they weren't very good this year. So he's got all the knowledge that we need on who the best players are. So if you don't know much about the draft, make sure you stick around for that. That's coming up here in about 20 minutes. Something coming up later tonight, though. Indiana Fever going on the road tonight to take on the Atlanta Dream, 7:30 on Ion. The game has been moved once again. We are seeing the Caitlin Clark effect in its full effectiveness, I guess. That was worded terribly. Apologies there. But yeah, tonight's game has been moved from the Gate Center, which holds a capacity of about 3,500 people, to the State Farm Arena, which holds about 17,000 people. Thank you to Michael Dwight for that information. The Fever, they're rolling right now. Okay, they've won 4 out of their last 5, looking to win their 4th game in a row, right? I mean, like, they're fun, and they're starting to kind of get there. The question is, like, this team is going to win games if Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, and Caitlin Clark continue to play well. All 3 of them have played well over these past 3 or 4 games. Okay, if they do again tonight, then they should have a great chance to win once again. This is also the start of a 5-game road trip. It is not uncommon at all for it's not uncommon at all for young teams, even good young teams, to struggle on the road. That's just what happens sometimes. So I'm intrigued to see how they look on the road. Can they continue playing well away from Gainbridge Fieldhouse? Okay, and look, this is not a bad team that they're playing tonight. The Atlanta Dream are 6-7. This is another very winnable game for the Indiana Fever. Can they go on the road, and can they pick up another win? I don't know. I guess we'll find out tonight. Something I haven't talked about in a while is college basketball. I haven't really talked about it since Purdue lost to UConn in the national championship game, outside of some digs at each program from here and there. And yesterday, Matt Painter addressed the media for the first time in a while. And he was, of course, asked about Cannon Catchings, the former 4-star recruit that was supposed to be awesome, but then asked for a release from his national letter of intent. Here's what Purdue head coach Matt Painter had to say about releasing Cannon Catchings from his national letter of intent.
Oh, not at all. Like, I want people that want to be here. You know, he asked out of his letter and we granted it. So it's not that big a deal. You coach and you recruit and you go out there and you put your best foot forward. And, if something happened, it would be one thing, but nothing happened. It's just one of those deals where, he was concerned about his role and just wanted out of his letter, and then kind of went back the next day and said everything was good, and it just was like, this is probably better that we, kind of part ways if, you're questioning things before things start. And that's, it's kind of the uncertainty. I think every freshman that comes in has those uncertain thoughts, but, you compete and earn your way into a role. Like, I can't anoint a role, just somebody out of thin air. You walk in, you compete. Zach Edey didn't have a role. Fletcher Lawyer didn't have a role. They came in here and they earned what they got, and that's the way it is. But I think more than anything, it's just the happiness of your players and the happiness of your team. It's competition and it's difficult, but if right away, you get sense hey man, you're starting off on the wrong foot, and somebody wants out of their letter, don't. I think it's probably best to go separate ways. So we wish him good luck and hope everything works for him.
I love Matt Painter so much. He's a great basketball coach, and I like the way that he does things. If you couldn't make it out through the audio, Matt Painter released Cannon Catchings from his national letter of intent. The next day, Catching calls Coach Painter. He's like, hey, you know what? Never mind. We're good. I would like to stay. I'd like to be a Purdue Boilermaker. I'd like to compete at a chance to potentially win a national title. And Matt Painter was like, nah, we're good. I think it's best for us to go our separate ways. And this is the way that it should be. As soon as a kid wants to leave a program, the head coach should not allow them back. Whether that's a freshman who wants a release from his national letter of intent, whether that's a sophomore that wants to transfer away. Like, as if I was coaching, as soon as a player put their name in the transfer portal, you're gone. You're not coming back. Simple as that. And that's how it should be. And looking at Catchings, when a player comes in, shows up, doesn't like the role that they've been assigned to start, or they feel as though they should receive more playing time or whatever it is. Hey, kid, you went to Purdue, one of the 2 best teams in the country last year. Did you really think you were just going to show up and be able to play immediately? That's not how it works. So it sounds to me like Cannon Catchings showed up, thought he was, going to be a starter, thought he was going to play 30 minutes a night, whatever it is. Matt Painter then made it clear, hey, man, you're not playing 30 minutes a night. And then Catching was like, fine, then I'll leave. He probably, gets his release, probably reached out to a couple of different coaches. They're like, we don't want you anymore. Our roster's full. And then Catching was like, oh, crap. Never mind. Hey, Coach Painter, let me come back. And he's like, no, we're good. That is very much a mindset about me. That is very much a selfish mindset. And selfish mindsets can ruin a team. They can ruin a locker room. Okay, so good for Matt Painter and good for Purdue. Like, I don't know if Mike Woodson would have done that. I think Mike Woodson legitimately would have let that kid come back. And, I don't think that Purdue is really losing much of anything. Sure, Cannon Catchings is a very talented player. Okay, the rankings and the highlights and all those things undoubtedly point to that. But, yeah, don't let him back. Good job, Coach Painter. I'm not surprised in the slightest that he did the right thing and not letting Cannon Catchings come back. Okay? Now, I want to move into the NBA draft because coming up here in about 15 minutes, my guy Parker Flemming is going to come on, and I want my ideas on the table for before he comes on. So let me just get this out in the open. This is a bad draft class. Calling it bad doesn't do it justice. It's horrendous. It's awful. It's atrocious. Whatever word you want to use for really bad. Okay? That is what this draft class is. When discussing this draft class, keep this in mind. The Atlanta Hawks have the number 1 overall pick. But don't think about the Hawks having the number 1 overall pick. Think the Atlanta Hawks have the 8th overall pick. Because that is what this draft class is like. Imagine the 7 best players are already gone. Now the draft begins. There are not any players in this draft class that appear to have superstar potential. Okay? If a team in the lottery drafts a player about the caliber of Derek White, then that is a great draft. For this draft, okay, it is a draft littered with role players, not superstars. It's like an NFL draft filled with nothing but offensive linemen and defensive tackles. Okay, it's not sexy, but there are important players that will be drafted this year that will play on roles for teams that help them win titles. Okay, that is what this draft is filled of. None of these dudes are going to win finals MVP. That's not going to happen. Okay, every single player, even the ones that are going to be drafted top 5, have flaws. Okay, so that being said, I'm going to give you some of the different players that I like in this year's draft. Not even players that I like, just players that I'm more so intrigued by than anything else. So let's start with Kentucky. The 2 Kentucky guards. Very concerned about their size. Reed Shepherd and Reeves. Okay, those are, the 2 guys coming out of Kentucky that can really hoop. They're both projected to be top 10 picks. And, we'll see how they look. I really like Reed Shepherd. Okay, I do. I mean, they are just like, he's a lot of what I think teams want in the NBA now from that guard spot. Okay, the issue is he's just not very big. He's not very tall. Okay, he's small. That's the issue with Reed Shepherd, but he is a legitimate shooter. Okay, like that dude can absolutely shoot the basketball. Like he can. He was the best shooter in the SEC. He was one of the best shooters in in all of college basketball this last year. Okay, and he's a willing defender. The issue is he's undersized. Now, the height stuff this year is a little bit different. So from the start of the NBA Combine up until last year, they measured the height of players with their shoes on. And then this year, they're like, no, that is no longer a thing. We are now going to measure players without their shoes. And so he's listed at 6'1". He's like a quarter of an inch away from being 6'2". So with shoes, he's probably closer to like 6'3" or 6'4". Still, though, he's not very big. And small guards get swallowed up in the playoffs, against good teams at least. The Celtics swallowed up Kyrie Irving. Darius Garland, point guard for the Cavaliers, swallowed up against the Magic and the Celtics. This is a league filled with big people. Basketball made for big people. It just is. And Reed Sheppard isn't big. Rob Dillingham, his running mate, the same way. A lot of skill with the ball in his hands, can create space, but he's listed at 6'1". Okay, that is the thing with these two players. They are both highly skilled. They both possess the necessary skills to succeed in the NBA playing guard, but they lack size. I like everything else about them, especially Reed Sheppard because of his ability to shoot the ball. But the lack of size is a major concern. Moving on to a player that a lot of people have potentially going number 1 overall. Moving on to a player that a lot of people have number 1 overall on their board that I just don't understand. I don't understand Alex Sarr, Frenchman, okay, playing in the Australian League right now. Some people have Alex Sarr regarded as the best player in the NBA draft. I don't understand how a backup center in the Australian League can be considered the best player in this draft. Okay, his floor is he's going to be a good defender because he's like 7 feet tall and he moves decently well. I understand that part. But there are people that are optimistic about his offensive upside. That is why he is held in as high regard as he is. I don't see it. He can handle the ball a little bit. He's a decent passer, but the dude can't shoot. And this is, if you're going to be a shot creator like people think Alex Sarr can become, you better be able to shoot the basketball. He's shooting 29.5% from 3 and 61% from the free throw line this year. That's not good. That's also about what he shot when he was playing with the overtime elite last year as well. He doesn't have much touch away from the basket. And look, when you're projecting whether or not a player is going to turn into a good three-point shooter or not, you look at their touch around the basket. Can they make floaters? And you look at their free throw percentage. He doesn't have touch on floaters, and he doesn't shoot the ball well from the free throw line. I highly doubt he develops into a good shooter. But once again, this is an awful draft class. Teams are going to reach at the top. It's going to happen. Alex Sarr is going to go top 5. I don't understand it. Okay? The shooting stuff and the struggles, to me, that doesn't sound like a player worthy of the number 1 overall pick in the way that basketball is played today. That doesn't sound like someone who's going to develop into a superstar. Maybe the most intriguing player in the draft for me is Devin Carter Jr. out of Providence. Devin Carter Jr. led the Big East in scoring, and he was at the top in rebounding despite being 6'2". And I know what you're going to say, Jonathan, 6'2". That's small. You didn't like Reed Sheppard, and you didn't like Rob Dillingham because they're small. You're right. The difference with Devin Carter is that he has a 6'9" wingspan. So even though he's not tall, his length should help him finish. We saw that when he was playing for Providence. And because he has a 6'9" long wingspan, he can be a good defender just because of how long he is. Okay? He's a good finisher. He handles the ball well. He's athletic. He's got a very high motor. I am intrigued to see what he looks like in the NBA. He has a lot of qualities that I like, but he's 6'2". The field goal percentage wasn't great, but he probably led the Big East in grenades. By grenades, I mean his teammates threw him the ball with 3 seconds left on the shot clock, and he was like, oh, crap, I got to get this up. So maybe the field goal percentage wasn't as good because of that. I don't know. Devin Carter Jr., though, I find very intriguing, and I'm very interested to see how he looks when he plays in the NBA. Finally, last take here on the draft before my guy Parker Flemming joins. Dalton Knecht is the most sure thing in this draft. Okay, he is the definition of a sure thing. At a minimum, he's going to space the floor. And he's so tall and long that he should be able to figure out how to be at least a decent defender. Okay, he showed at the draft combine that he's a legit athlete, and everyone knows how well he can score the ball. Okay, he shot 40% from three last year, and everyone, especially Purdue fans, know how lethal he can be coming off of screens and shooting over players. He has a lot of upside because he can handle the ball as well. He's also huge. He's 6'6" with no shoes. With shoes on, he's probably like 6'8", and he has a 6'9" wingspan. Okay, because of that, he's gonna be able to post up smaller players, shoot over smaller players. He's athletic enough to go by bigs. He's going to fall in this draft. Dalton Connect will, because he's older, but he shouldn't. Okay, this is such a bad draft class that his age should not matter. Okay, coming up here in about 5 minutes, Parker Flemming, writer on Substack, writes the Substackalies Substack. Can't wait to have him on. I've had him on before. Great dude, nice guy. Cannot wait to have him on. He's coming up here in about 5 minutes, and we're going to talk a little NBA draft.
No matter what draws you to the water, the Yamaha 2024 boat lineup will make you feel right at home. Enjoy the spacious layout, advanced technology, all standard and used to create an incredible experience. If the water's calling you, there's a Yamaha boat waiting for you. Hey, on June 21st and 22nd, Just Add Water Boats is having an on-the-water boat show. Come on down and test drive a new Yamaha, Chaparral, Vexus, Crest Pontoon, or Godfrey Pontoon. The boats will be in the lake, revved up and ready to go.
Hello, it's me, the designer jeans in your closet. The back of your closet. What am I doing here? Would you keep caviar in the back of your fridge with the ketchup and old milk? Yeah, I don't think so. So, what happened to us? I mean, have you seen my label? I used to summer in the Hamptons, and now I'm stuck behind a pair of sweats. Sure, I never really fit you quite right, and one of my pockets is so small you can't even squeeze your hand into it. But it's all about the look. And I look good. I need to get back out on the scene so I can be seen. You know, going to fancy parties, getting expensive iced coffees, Sunday fun days, okay? So take me to Goodwill, where I can really make a difference.
Your donations to Goodwill create new jobs, training programs, and education assistance for people in your community. To find your nearest donation center, go to goodwill.org. Donate stuff. Create jobs. A message from Goodwill and the Ad Council.
This is Indy Sports Ticket, 1430.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. The NBA draft is only 5 days away. Parker Flemming, who writes for a Substack, is joining me. He's a Grizzlies fan, so he's been looking at this draft stuff for a while now, because that's what you do when your team doesn't make the playoffs. Parker, what's going on, man?
Dude, how's it going, Jonathan? I tell you what, I forgot how long the off season is when your team doesn't make the playoffs. Like, it's especially too with, the Grizzlies made the playoffs in 2021, and the playoffs were a little later than usual because of COVID. And then 2022, they made a second round run in the playoffs. So it was like only a month gap between their exit and the draft. And then last year, first round exit, but like they still made the playoffs. But it felt so long, especially too, like since all those injuries happened to John Morant, Marcus Smart, and Desmond Bain, you kind of started your draft homework in January. So it's been a journey. I'm excited it's 5 days away. I've done a lot of work on this draft. I'm excited to release more of that work next week. And I also appreciate, Jonathan, being on this show with you, man, talking about hoops. Dude,
it's the best. And I always butcher the name of your Substack. So if you want to plug that real quick, that would be great.
Yeah, it's Sub-Sackalitas. So if you're a real hoops sicko and remember Jake Sackalitas from the early 2000s, then this is for you.
Okay, there you go. So real quick, before we get into the draft stuff, thoughts on JJ Reddick being hired by the Lakers?
Yeah, so I'm a huge JJ Reddick fan. When I first got into basketball when I was a kid, JJ Reddick was the guy that got me into college basketball and got me into Duke basketball. I think he's a really smart basketball mind. I do think it's one of those things where people, are like, oh, he got the job after just having a podcast, when like people discredit that there's experience that goes into it when you've played in the NBA that long, as JJ Reddick did. He had over a 15-year career. Like, granted, you have a lot of these longtime NBA veterans that are going through, the traditional, going through as an assistant coach and working their way up the ranks to become a head coach. Like Sam Cassell, I'm surprised he's not a head coach yet, but I know a guy like Ime Udoka took a while to be a head coach as well. But look, and also too, the NBA is losing an awesome media member as well, because we don't have a lot of media members that just talk hoops. It's all trade rumors and legacy talks, and JJ Reddick just got to the hoops part of it, and it made it really enjoyable. But I think he's a smart guy, really smart guy, actually. And I wish that he took a job that didn't come with as much pressure as the Laker job. Because not only do you have the Laker job, but you have the pressure of coaching LeBron James, which let's call a spade a spade. LeBron's not exactly known for having a coach tied to his name or tied to his career for a long time. I think the longest one was it Mike Brown in Cleveland? Was it Eric Spoelstra in Miami? Like, since then, it's just kind of been this revolving door. David Blatt, Tyronn Lue, Luke Walton, Frank Vogel, Darvin Ham now, and now JJ Redick. Like, that's just since he went back to Cleveland. Since 2014, he's had 6 different head coaches. Like, this is a tough job, and I hate that too, because it's going to become like he's going to become, more scrutinized. Everything he's going to do is going to be looked under a microscope because of his track to becoming a head coach, then taking the Laker job, and then also coaching LeBron James. It's just, I hope he does well, because this job just doesn't really appeal to me, man.
Yeah, that makes sense. Joined by Parker Flemming, writer of the Sackalitas Substack that also supports St. Jude, which is awesome. And, I was talking about this earlier. I think it would be hysterical if Bronny James got drafted by the Suns and then LeBron opted out of his contract and went to go play in Phoenix after campaigning for JJ Redick to be the new head coach. I think that'd be just the funniest thing ever.
Yeah, and that would be funny, but we also just saw Rich Paul kind of squash that rumor of like, oh, LeBron's going to play wherever Bronny is, but like still like, but also too, you had like Bill Simmons, the greatest basketball conspiracy theorist of all time, probably.
Yeah.
But the idea of like the Celtics drafting Bronny at 30 and holding him hostage to get a good trade, like that's from the Lakers. Like, but also too, like the idea of like, oh yeah, we're gonna hold him hostage and say, yeah, you can have him if we have Max Christie. It's like Max Christie wasn't even a rotation player on that Lakers team. That's what's hilarious.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I do think like stuff like that it's hilarious. I ultimately think that the Lakers will either use the 55th pick to get Bronny James, or they'll go chase him in the draft to make sure that he doesn't get picked before the 55th pick. Yeah. I do think that they're being strategic. And I know people out there like, oh, like LeBron being selfish with Bronny's decision. I do think there is a little bit of it too. Like, I hate that there's like this much of a hoopla over a young basketball player who still needs a lot of developing to become an NBA player.
Yeah.
But I do think, Rich Paul, it's something in the ringer. It's like, it's in ESPN as well. It's like, it's not necessarily the LeBron factor. They're trying to position Bronny to the best places to go possible for his player development. It's like, what if he gets picked by a team like Charlotte or
Detroit,
a team like, Detroit or Portland, like where there's no opportunity, no developmental pathway to grow. Yeah. There's not, like you obviously, like you want to position your client to be in the best place possible. And I think that's what they're doing more for Bronny than like, oh yeah, we need him to go play with LeBron.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I like how in that take you explained that I'm assuming you're not a big fan of Bronny, considering you just said that he has a ways to go in terms of being an NBA player, which I agree with, just to be clear on that.
No, I mean, I do like Bronny James. I actually do, because I think he would showcase more of his NBA potential if he returned to college for another year. Because I think people forget, like, oh, he had a bad freshman year. Yeah, the dude couldn't really have an off season because he had a heart attack in July on the court. Like, he went into cardiac arrest on the basketball floor. So, like, not only do you have the trauma of, like, returning from a heart attack, but the countless amount of work and rehab to get back to even playing. Like, it's crazy. And, like, I'm sure Rich Paul, LeBron, Bronny, they probably gauged, hey, it's probably better for me to go develop in somebody's G League rather than return to school for another year. And I totally get that. But he's a good defender, he's a smart basketball player. He needs to be able to shoot. That's the biggest thing. He shot like 19% on catch and shoot threes, and that's just not going to fly in the NBA. I think 6'1" guard who's not a natural point guard. It's just not going to fly. So I do think that this presents an opportunity. Like, hey, let him get some real development in the G League. They can figure out if his role is a point guard, is he an off-ball guard? Because, like, who's to say he can't have – I think his absolute upside, it's not even high. It's not sexy or anything. But, like, what if he just becomes, like, Miles McBride? Like, I feel like that's a good outcome for him.
Yeah. Yeah, I would completely agree. Miles McBride's a good player, no doubt.
Yeah. Got
So,
a second contract. Like, that's a good player.
yeah, I totally agree. Once again, joined by Parker Flemming, writer of the Sackalidis Substack. So let me ask you, who do you think goes number 1 overall to the Hawks?
Yeah, I ultimately think it's Zachary Richichet. I know there's a lot of the smoke about Donovan Clingan, and I want to say some Hawks X account pointed out how Alex Sarr has the same agent as Luka and then Al Horford in 2016, and then there's somebody else who kind of pivoted from Atlanta. I do understand that for Sarr, it's like, okay, he sees himself as a 4 and not a 5. They have Jalen Johnson in Washington. It's kind of wide open for him to be a 4 and get the developmental opportunities that don't come in Atlanta. But I think it's ultimately just that. I think it's just Zachary Richichet. They need wings. Like DeAndre Hunter's fine, but he hasn't really been living up to that top 5 hype that he was in 2019. Bogdan Bogdanovic is on the other side of 30. And I know there's a lot of, I think Richichet is polarizing, and people have polarizing takes on him because it's like, oh, Javoni has him 1, and he's not the number 1 pick. There's no way. He can't do this. But at the end of the day, he's a 6'10", or I think he measured 6'8" without shoes, which in reality, he's 6'10". He's playing basketball with shoes on. Like, he's 6'10". And he's a 3-and-D wing. You don't get 6'10", 3-and-D wings. If you really think about how many of those guys exist. Like Trey Murphy. And like Trey Murphy, a guy like Trey Murphy would go close to 1 in this draft. So I think it makes all the sense in the world for them to just pick Zachary Richichet. Don DeClingan, I know the connection of, like, he's a big man, the Gobert comparisons, Quinn Snyder coached Gobert, developed Gobert. But, like, they already have almost $40 million tied up into the center position. I don't think Clint Capella is as easy to trade as people think because of how his game's declined a little bit, and he's making $22 million next year. Are they going to block Onyeka Okongwu again? If they're going to block Onyeka Okongwu again, I think a team like Memphis should get on the phone and make Atlanta a compelling offer to make him a starting center. But I think it just makes all the sense in the world that Zachary Richichet is the pick, because Trey, DeJounte, Richichet, Jalen Johnson, Onyeka Okongwu, that's a really good starting 5. And I think they could potentially set themselves up for like an Indiana type run next year.
Yeah, I agree with that. Once again, joined by Parker Flemming, writer of the Sackalidis Substack. Yeah, Richichet, big wing, can shoot it like you said. There aren't very many 6'10", 3-and-D wings, and so it would make sense, especially in a draft like this that isn't littered with great prospects, for a guy like that to go 1. I was telling my audience earlier, it's like, imagine this draft starts at pick like 8, not pick 1, because that's really kind of what this is like. So you've obviously watched a lot of tape. You've read a lot. You've gone through the numbers. Who is your favorite prospect?
Yeah, probably Alex. I mean, Alex Sarr is number 1 on my board, if that's what you kind of consider like my favorite prospect, just because I haven't seen his archetype in the modern NBA fail. You look at Jaren Jackson Jr., you look at Chet, like, even, I don't think he becomes these guys either. I don't know if he's this magnitude, but like Jaren Jackson Jr., Chet Holmgren, Victor Wembanyama is obviously the pinnacle, the standard of this archetype. Kristaps Porzingis, like these big, rangy, quick, 7'1" forwards, forward bigs, whatever. Let's just say 7'1" basketball players.
Yeah,
they can rim roam. They block shots like crazy. They can put the ball on the deck. They can grab and go rebounds and start transition offense. Like, I don't think Alex Sarr is a perfect prospect. He probably needs to put on a little bit more muscle. He needs to improve as a shooter and improve as a finisher. But at the end of the day, like, his defense for a 7'1" player is really special. Like, he can defend in space. I know the clip goes around on socials a lot of him locking up Ron Holland in the G League Ignite Perk Wildcat Showcase game.
Yeah.
I just think that Alex Sarr is probably the best, but I think my favorite is Reed Shepherd, because it doesn't make much sense, if we're going to be real, that Reed Shepherd's this good. He's a little under 6'2", barefoot. He has a 6'3" wingspan, 180 pounds. But, like, it's just one of those things, like, for one, he's a 42-inch vertical. He averaged 51 or not average, sorry. He shot 51% from three. He shot just as well on catch and shoot threes as he did on pull-up threes, which is bonkers.
Yeah.
He averaged 2.5 steals a game. He's like an outlier of a prospect, if we're gonna frame it that way. It's one of those things where I think people don't understand how high his upside is. This might come across hot take-ish, whatever. I think there's a reality that his highest outcome falls somewhere between Mike Conley and, like, not as good as a passer, but there's some Nashy elements to his game too. But I think he's ultimately, he can become like a Mike Conley type player, but like he's already like one of the best shooting prospects the draft has seen since Steph Curry. Like, he is an electric shooter, and he's a really smart basketball player. I just think that Reed Shepherd's a guy that he could ultimately surprise people in the NBA. I know people know he's good, but I don't think people know how good he is.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's how I feel about him. You know, we were talking off the air, once again joined by Parker Flemming, writer of the Sack Elitist Substack. We were talking off the air, and I was like, if Reed Shepherd was 6'4", 6'5", he would hands down be the number 1 overall pick, and it wouldn't be close. Just because, like you said, like, he's such a great shooter, and that is the most coveted skill in the NBA right now. Like, you're not going to play at guard unless you can really shoot. The issue is his size, but with that being said, he's a legit athlete. And so because of that, like, he can kind of hold his own defensively. You know, wouldn't love him if he got switched onto, you know, Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown. But then again, I don't like it when anyone gets switched onto Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown. So, you know, the size stuff, like, that's the concern. But outside of that, like, he checks every box. I feel the same way about Dillingham, also coming out of Kentucky. Like, possesses a lot of the skills you want a guard to have. But if I remember correctly, he's even shorter than Reed Shepherd is. And so those two guys I like a lot from a basketball skill set standpoint, but it's just there's a question about the size.
Yeah, and even Dillingham. Like, I love Dillingham. I mean, I haven't covered him as extensively because I don't think that he's a guy that the Grizzlies would draft.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that gets slept on with Rob Dillingham, people think that he's like, oh, just a bucket getter. But yeah, in a team with a lot of ball handling, so like the assist numbers are kind of diluted because Kentucky always deploy like 2 of or 3 of Dillingham, Shepherd, Reeves, and Wagner all at a time. But he averaged almost 4 assists a game off the bench. He shot about 44% from 3, but he shot 47% on catch and shoot threes. So, like, he's not just this guy that he's just this traditional bucket getter. He's more so a score first guard. He's a great playmaker, and he even came out and said, I think he's been campaigning to be drafted by the Spurs.
Yeah.
He gets drafted by San Antonio. His job is to get Wembanyama the ball. But I think his catch and shoot three just makes him more dynamic because he's electric, moving off the ball. He relocates so well.
Kind of like a Tyrese Maxey.
I think he has a lot of Maxey to his game. It would not surprise me if Rob Dillingham becomes like this Maxey type player. But yeah, I just think those Kentucky guards, there's also that history of like never underestimate Kentucky guards. And like I think people are using the weak draft narrative to undermine just how good Reed Shepherd and Rob Dillingham can be in the NBA.
Without a doubt. The guards that played for Kentucky or guards that played for really Rick Carlisle in general, they tend to have a good career for whatever reason.
Yep.
So I'm completely with you on those two guys. Once again, joined by Parker Flemming. We're talking some NBA draft, and since I'm in Indiana, I have to ask you about Zach Edey and Khalil Ware. I like
Yeah.
Edey. I want the Thunder to take him. Like, they have a million draft picks. They can afford to take a chance on a guy like Edey, and they really need a backup big. So would love to see him go there at 12. Khalil Ware is interesting. I think he fits just about anywhere because 7-foot guys that are athletic, can block shots and rim run, tend to succeed in the NBA at some level. So what are your thoughts
Yeah.
on those two guys?
Yeah, well, I mean, I like both of those guys, like, an extent. I'm not ecstatic about the idea of, like, taking either one of them at 9. Like, I would be like, I get it, but I wouldn't be like a giant fan of it. With Edey, I did a lot of context switching that made me more sold on Edey, because at first I was like, okay, what's he going to look like when he's not force-fed post-ups the entire game and he doesn't get this, like, generational whistle? But he's going to be massive for rebounding, screening, and finishing. Like, I got to the point too with, like, people were like, oh, it's a bigger Zubac, a bigger Adams, a bigger balance shoots. I'm like, that's a lottery guy in this draft. Like, this is that's a very good NBA center. So, like, I've warmed up to Edey. Obviously, I think with Edey or Ware, I would rather trade down for them rather than pick them at 9 just to accumulate more assets on top of getting them. With Ware, I'm torn because he has that skill set you kind of want from the modern big man, and you look at him and say, oh, could it be Derek Lively? But I know the motor stuff at Oregon will kind of follow him in the evaluation process, but I think he cleaned that up at Indiana. The only thing that makes me pause about Ware is the fact that, like, when he played against NBA caliber big men, whether it's Donovan Clingan, Zach Edey, or Johnny Broome from Auburn, I felt like he kind of shrunk in a sense, and he wasn't nearly as impactful as he is against, like, other college centers that he's head and shoulders better than. So that's the only thing that really makes me pause. I also think that he has a lot of room to grow with his processing, like seeing, like, mapping the floor. If he catches the ball in the paint, it's going up. He's not mapping the floor like, okay, I'm drawing 2. What does the perimeter look like? Is there somebody cutting? Is there somebody spotting up from 3? And then defensively, like, being a pick and roll defender, I think he defended a little bit too upright, which kind of affected his ability to recover and react to the next play within the action. So that's kind of where I stand on Ware. I see the upside. I totally get it. There's just some things. I think he just has about a year or so before he's, like, legitimately contributing. But you can also make that case across the board, to be honest.
Without a doubt. Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. The other intriguing thing about Ware is he shot 43% from 3 last year. He didn't take a ton, but just knowing that, like, he has that touch. You were talking about Alex Sarr earlier, and some teams apparently seem to really like the offensive upside, and I look at him and I'm just like, I don't know. We'll see, I guess. But I think you're right on the defensive stuff on Sarr and Ware and Edey and everything that you said. I do want to talk a little bit of Pacers before I let you go. They're picking, like, early second round and then later in the second round. They really need a wing, specifically wings that can play defense. Are there any guys going later in the draft that you potentially like for the Pacers?
Yes. I don't know if he falls to the second round, but I think Indiana has enough offense to make Ryan Dunn out of Virginia work. He would be like, if he's just playable offensively, his defense is that good where I think he's a very impactful player in this draft. I'm just looking at my second round board because Indiana has 3 second round picks, right?
Yeah, that sounds right. It's 2 or 3, but yes,
2 or 3. Okay. Kevin McCullar, like, great defender. I'm not buying his shooting, but I think there's a fit for him to kind of have this, like, Bruce Brown, Gary Payton II type role in the league. Isaiah Crawford, I do know he had some knee some knee history in college. I think he tore his ACL in the same knee twice.
Jeez.
But like 40% 3-point shooter, averaged almost 4 stocks a game. Like he's an awesome defensive prospect. I'm trying to look at my board for like 3-and-D type guys. I mean, he's older, but like Keshad Johnson as a defensive 4 could be really good. I like how he defends out on the perimeter.
Very
Same
athletic.
with Anton. Yeah, very athletic. Same with Anton Watson. I would like him as well. I don't know if he's going to make the jump to the NBA next year, but a sneaky like draft and stash guy, because Indiana does have 3 second-round picks, and they have a lot. They don't have many roster spots either. But like Melvin Agenta out of France, 6'7" energy wings. He's already kind of fit this scalable 3-and-D mold where like the majority of his shots do come from downtown. He's a pretty good shooter as well. That would be a good pick. Jalen Bridges might be my favorite second-round target though, because he's 6'7". I'm not sure what his defensive position is, but he crashes the glass and he's an excellent 3-point shooter. And I think he would just provide a lot of size between the 3 and the 4 for Indiana.
Okay. That makes that I'm excited now. I'm ready to go for the second round on Thursday, I guess is when that'll be of next week. I hate
Thursday
that it's 2
afternoon.
days. I hate that it's 2 days.
I like it. I like it because I've covered the NBA draft. The Grizzlies typically have like this setup for media members to like kind of have a watch party, and then they'll make Zach Kleiman available afterwards. And like you're there until 1 a.m. at least. And
That's
then
fair.
That's not even considering the fact that like the front offices are having to sign their 2-way guys and their exhibit 10s right after the draft. Like it's an all-nighter for them. So like at least this would allow time to breathe a little bit before the second round, because it's not just the second round. Like right after the draft, you had to build out your summer league roster, which eventually sometimes becomes your G League team. So being able to like act quick on that. So I think I'm very interested to see how this turns out, but I'm a fan of it.
Okay, fair enough. Once again, joined by Parker Flemming, writer of the Sack Elite Substack. It's a free Substack. If you do decide to give money to it, all the proceeds go to St. Jude, which is just awesome. Last question for you, Parker, and I will let you go. Is this draft worse than the 2013 draft with Anthony Bennett?
I'm going to pause. I think actually no. Pre-draft, no. I don't think so.
Okay.
Just because I see more of a pathway for a lot of these players to become good NBA players. You look across the board though, and you're trying to find who's that Giannis, who's that Rudy Gobert, who's that CJ McCollum. I think this draft has a little bit more like McCollum's than Giannis's or Gobert potential types. Like we talked about Shepard and Dillingham, but there's Jared McCain and Devin Carter, Nikola Topic,
Love
Isaiah
Devin
Collier.
Carter.
Like Devin Carter's a dog.
He's
like
awesome.
I'm excited to see where he goes. Very excited to see where he goes. I mean, it's inevitable he's going to end up in San Antonio with Wembanyama. Like it's going to happen. But yeah, I don't think it's as worse as 2013, because I can at least like get excited about some of these guys. And I mean, granted, I was in high school when 2013 draft happened. I don't remember being that excited about any of the potential prospects that at the top of the board there.
Yeah, look, Anthony Bennett went number 1. Like, I think that tells us all we need to know about the top prospects of that draft.
Yep.
But
exactly. Yeah. Like I remember like being excited. Like I was like, how did Ben McLemore fall to 7? I think that was the only one that really caught me off guard. Like, how did Ben McLemore go 7? Because I thought he was going to go 1. But yeah, that draft, I don't think we're going to look at it the same way as that. I think it's going to be more maybe 2020. No, but not even 2020, because like there's still Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball, like, and then among all the other draft steals, Halliburton. Like I didn't say Halliburton because he wasn't like projected to be like
that's
1, 2,
fair.
3.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But you're adding to my point. Don't listen to the pre-draft conceptions, because even that 2020 draft had Tyrese Halliburton, Tyrese Maxey, Desmond Bain, Jaden McDaniels all outside the top 10 among all these other guys. So, yeah, I think you added more to my point there.
Yeah, hey, that's what I try to do, you know. Parker, thanks for your time, man.
Yep.
You were awesome once again. Follow him on Twitter at Parker Flocka, which is an awesome name, by the way. That's great.
Thank you.
You got it. Parker, thanks for your time, man. See ya.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You got it. That was Parker Flemming. Great guy. Go check out his Substack, Sackalidis. Once again, if you decide to give to it, all the proceeds go to St. Jude, which is just awesome. He was great. Definitely knows his stuff if you can't tell. I'm way over on time. Short break. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, we're going to talk JJ Reddick to the Lakers and why he's going to be a good head coach. What's going on in the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Tickets? Just wrapped up talking with Parker Flemming, writer of the Sackalidis Substack. Talked a lot of NBA draft. I know there's been some questions. The prospects this year aren't quite as prominent as they have been in the past. Hopefully, if you had questions about the draft, which is 5 days away, hopefully he and I were able to answer some of those questions. And a question that has been asked for a while now is, when is JJ Reddick going to be hired as the Lakers' new head coach? Well, yesterday is the answer to that question. So, look, as we all know, JJ Reddick, new Lakers head coach. This isn't surprising at all. As soon as Danny Hurley passed, everyone knew that JJ Reddick was eventually going to become the head coach. And, that officially happened yesterday. The most important thing for any head coach, okay, and this is why I think JJ Reddick will be successful, is that your star has to buy into whatever it is that you're selling. And LeBron James is going to buy into whatever JJ Reddick says the Lakers should do. Okay, LeBron clearly has respect for JJ Reddick. He wouldn't be doing an X's and O's podcast if he thought JJ Reddick was dumb. Okay, he wouldn't do it. But he thinks he's smart, so he spends time with him, and they talk hoops together. And here's the other thing as to why I think JJ Reddick will be successful. He's smart. Okay, I know that people don't like it when he calls games. I do. Whenever he calls games, I always expect to learn something. I listen to his podcast that he does because every time I do, I learn something. Okay, JJ Reddick is plenty smart enough to coach at the NBA level. But that wasn't the question surrounding the hire. The concern with the hire was the fact that JJ Reddick has never coached before, but he's played. He played in the league for 15 years. He played for some good coaches in college. He played for Mike Krzyzewski, one of the best coaches ever. Okay, and I guarantee you that he learned things from Coach K that he'll use as the head coach of the Lakers when he was in the NBA. He played for multiple good coaches, including Stan Van Gundy, Doc Rivers, Brett Brown, Rick Carlisle. Okay, no matter how you feel about those coaches, they have all been successful. And I guarantee you that JJ Reddick is going to take things that he learned from them and use them when he's coaching the Lakers. All right. And because JJ Reddick has played for so many different coaches, and because he played in the league for 15 years, and he played with so many different players, he's going to be well equipped. Okay. There is not going to be a situation thrown his way that he hasn't seen before. And in 2022, JJ Reddick was asked why he would make a good NBA head coach. Here's what he had to say.
I don't necessarily think it's one thing. I feel like I know the game pretty well because of some coaches I played for, really specifically Coach K. He taught me about adaptability, and our game, the NBA, changes so fast year to year. Having the mindset of just being open to change. One of my greatest skills as a human being is my ability to communicate and communicate in an open and transparent way. I did that as a teammate. I think that's part of coaching. Not avoiding things and not avoiding confrontation. Locker rooms, team chemistry, it's a very fragile thing. We see it all the time in the NBA. I look at coaching as a way to help. It's like I had so many people help me in my career, and not just head coaches, but assistant coaches, player development people. And they have such a valuable place in my heart and in my life. And I'd love to be one of those people someday.
That was JJ Reddick back in 2022 talking about why he would be a good head coach. I love his response, especially the part about adaptability, because once again, JJ Reddick is right. The league changes every year. Teams just watched how the Celtics went on and won a title. Okay, the NBA, like the NFL, is a copycat league. There are going to be teams that are going to change their roster to look more like the Celtics and try to do what the Celtics did. And there are going to be teams that change their roster to try and stop what the Celtics did. We've seen examples of both of these just this last season. The Timberwolves altered their roster so that they could slow down the Denver Nuggets, and it worked. And we saw the Rockets copy what the Nuggets did. They ran their offense through the low post, through a center that can really pass the ball, just like the Nuggets do with Jokic. Okay, the league changes every year, and having a coach that understands that is important. JJ Reddick does. He played in the NBA for 15 years. Okay, from the time he was drafted to the time that he retired, the league changed a lot. And he was able to adapt his game to stay relevant and to stay in a rotation. Right? If he can do it as a player, then I don't see why he wouldn't be able to do it as a coach. Okay, and this isn't the first time we've seen a former player get hired as a head coach with no prior coaching experience. Steve Nash was hired by the Nets in 2020. He wasn't a bad coach. He just had to coach James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving. None of them wanted to play basketball. I think that makes the job pretty hard if you're coaching a basketball team and your three best players don't want to play. I thought in spite of that, he did a good job there. Kevin Durant having slightly smaller feet away from making the Eastern Conference Finals. So there was that. Obviously, Steve Kerr was hired with no prior coaching experience, and he's doing a great job. He's the highest paid coach in the league, and he should be because he's one of the best coaches in the NBA. To be fair, though, for every Steve Kerr, there is a Derek Fisher. He was hired by the Knicks, and he was terrible. When it comes to JJ Reddick, though, I think he will be closer to Steve Kerr than Derek Fisher, okay? For one, he does get to coach LeBron James and Anthony Davis. That always helps when you have good players to coach. From a personality perspective, when you look at JJ Redick, I think he checks a lot of boxes as well. Okay, when it comes to understanding basketball and the knowledge, he checks all those boxes. Okay, like there's no debate there. But when you look at the personality and how he acts, I think he checks a lot of boxes. He is very driven. Okay, you don't have the success in media that JJ Redick has had without being driven. Of all the former players that have entered the media, he is the most prominent one right now. He is. And that's because he's driven and he's meticulous and he pays attention to everything. He's also very intelligent. If you've listened to him do interviews, he asks good questions. He is a deep thinker. That is an important aspect of coaching. He's also a major competitor. You don't play in the NBA for 15 years unless you're competitive. You just don't. He's meticulous in his attention to detail. If you listen to him, there's plenty of clips of him talking about how he would work out in college and in high school, from like how he would shoot and how he took care of his body. Very detail oriented. Okay, like these are the details and the qualities that the best coaches in the NBA have. Okay, and these are the qualities that are going to lead JJ Redick into being a good coach. With that being said, it is his first year coaching in the NBA. Okay, it is. And because of that, there are going to be ups and downs. There are going to be moments where he is great. There are going to be moments where he's bad because it's his first year. And because of that, I think JJ Redick should coach the Summer League for the Lakers. Okay, it's going to give him some sort of experience in running a practice. It'll give him a little bit of experience in how to manage an actual game. Like, when does he want to call timeouts? You know, how hands-on does he want to be with calling plays? It'll give him an opportunity to feel all of these different things out. Now, that being said, I doubt he's going to do that. Okay, but I think it'll be good for him. So I hope he does that. I think that'll help him get a little bit of a head start, but we'll see what happens. Coming up here in about 4 minutes, my guy, Zack Gray. Follow him on Twitter at ZG the Grapevine. He's going to join me. He texted me, said he wants to get some NFL and college football stuff out there in terms of his gambling stuff. And I said, hey, man, no doubt. It's Friday. We love having you on Friday. So Zack Gray joining me next, coming up here in about 4 minutes.
More winners, more often. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket, final segment of the day. No Dan Dockett show today. So, sorry about that. My guy, Zack Gray, is on the line. We just had the more winners, more often sounder go. And part of that is because of Zack Gray. Follow him on Twitter, at ZG the Grapevine. Professional sports gambler joining me. ZG, what is going on, my man?
Jay Smith, happy Friday. Pleasure to be on with you today.
Dude, it is a happy Friday. I'm so glad you're on. It's a great day to have you on, because I have a question for you that I've just been waiting to ask. But before we get to that, you texted me, you said you wanted to talk NFL and college football gambling, because those seasons are really not that far away.
Yeah, I just wanted to spread the word that the model and computer systems that I start to put together, started that process about a week ago, gearing up for the season. If you guys want, weekly projections for every single college football game, every single NFL game, over-unders, totals, spreads, all that, follow me on Twitter, ZG the Grapevine. But it's exciting. I crushed football. Everybody knows how good I did at college basketball, but wanted to share the word and give myself a little pat on the back, Jay Smith.
Oh, of course. You have to do that. Yeah, I get it. And you're right. You did crush college football, and you did crush the NFL as well. So you brought up college football. I wasn't going to ask you this, but then you brought it up. And the question just kind of popped into my head. If Ohio State doesn't win a title this year, what's the excuse for Ryan Day?
Okay, I'm passionate about this. You know this, so I have a good answer.
I know you do.
There's a couple things that has to happen here. They don't have to win a title, but if they don't beat Michigan, it's going to get real weird in Columbus.
Yeah.
I think the title is something that we're looking for. I think we have the best roster we've had since Ryan Day has been head coach, but it's going to be hard to win a national title. You have one thing in front of you that you must check off, and that's beating Michigan.
Yeah, I won't disagree with that, especially without Harbaugh. Like, if Harbaugh was there and they lost, I think it'd be a little different, because I think even Ohio State fans would admit that John Harbaugh's a great coach, or Jim, whichever one it is.
They're both.
Yeah, they're both good head coaches, and so like if you lose to him, it's like okay, but man, he's gone. If they lose, it's gonna be like you said, it'll get really weird. The thing, though, that I really wanted to ask you, have you seen this Yahoo Sports article on Michael Jordan?
Oh, goodness, no.
Oh, man. It's in your favor, and I was really hoping that you had read it. It's all about his 1988 Defensive Player of the Year season and how it might be fraudulent.
What, he was playing against plumbers and electricians, right? That's what I hear.
I don't know if that's true or not. I wasn't around, but basically this scorekeeper came forward who did not keep score for the Bulls. Let's just be clear on that. But he was basically like, yeah, it wasn't uncommon for home scorekeepers to juice players' stats back in the day. And they went back and they watched some old Bulls games, and they realized that like Michael Jordan home games, they would give him like extra steals and extra blocks and things like that. And man, I was really excited to talk to you about it.
I love this because I think we had a modern day example of this. Maybe it was last year or 2 years ago, where there was that big Jaren Jackson conspiracy on his blocks at home.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do.
So I love these conspiracy theories, and I love the fact that we think that humans that are keeping score don't have any bias when they see these guys every day.
Yeah.
And interact with them. Like, it's going to happen. But I'm just glad it happened to Michael, so I can kind of put that in the vault when I have my Jordan LeBron debates.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, I don't think this moves the needle that much for like the Jordan LeBron debate stuff, just because like, yes, like the 1988 Defensive Player of the Year definitely gets mentioned because Michael Jordan has more Defensive Player of the Years than LeBron James, right? Like that gets mentioned.
Which is garbage. That's garbage. He got jobbed out of two of them. Mark Gasol.
Yeah.
Sorry. Sorry.
No. This is why I wanted to bring it up. I know this is something that you're passionate about. Joined by Zack Gray, very passionate LeBron guy, the best sports gambler that I know. Follow him on Twitter at ZG, the Grapevine. And you're right. Like the Marc Gasol one for sure. What's the other one that you're thinking of?
I don't know. He should have won every year.
Okay. But no, like I love getting on Twitter, and because this, at least it's big on my feed. I don't know about yours, but everyone's like, it's fraudulent, all this other kind of stuff. And I'm sitting here, and my thought process is the scorekeeper said that everybody did this. So doesn't that mean that like the Lakers' best defensive player also probably had juice numbers when he played at home?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And so like and the other thing is, I mean, you know this. You've talked with me enough. Like the cornerstone of the Michael Jordan argument is like the whole 6 for 6 thing. And I feel like as long as that stands, Michael Jordan fans aren't going to change their mind.
Yeah, it is. It is. I think we all have to remember when we're having this debate is that Michael Jordan did only play 6 seasons in his career. So like that is pretty amazing.
It is, man. It really is.
the shortest career ever for a GOAT. So I got to give him that.
I love you, man. You crack me up, dude. It's the best. Have you been tracking the draft stuff?
I've been keeping up with it a little bit. Like I said, I started the football stuff, but I'm hearing it's a low quality draft class. And you know what that tells me, without much research, that there's going to be like 3 or 4 guys that are like fringe all-stars out of this class. And everyone's going to go like, we didn't see this coming. And it's like, well, no one ever sees any draft coming. Like, look at Jokic, Giannis. There's so many examples we can go through, but like the NBA draft is so developmental. No one is ready. Like more so every year now. No one's ready to enter the NBA and have like a LeBron type impact or a KD type impact anymore. So like no one really knows. It's all projection. It's all potential.
I like Reed Shepherd a lot. I wish he was 6'5", because then I'd love
like
him.
Reed Shepherd.
Hey man, white boy summer's here. Peyton Pritchard got a ring. Reed Shepherd's going to go top 5. Just saying, watch out.
I heard Peyton Pritchard say that in the summer, he hires like guys just to play defense on him for like 4 hours. Like that's a role that you need to figure out how to wiggle into.
Yeah.
just guard Peyton Pritchard for 4 hours.
If he pays me, I would love to do that. I'd go home battered and bruised. I don't think he wants guys like me to guard him though. I think that's
you
the
guys
issue.
are about the same size.
We are. You're right. But you know what he should call? He should call TJ McConnell. That's what we should call. Those guys should play one-on-one together all summer long.
Yeah, I'm sure they do.
But yeah, they should. I also have to ask you this, because you are a LeBron guy and you are a Lakers fan. How do we feel about Reddick?
I think it's a great fit. I know we had last time I was on, we talked about the Danny Hurley fiasco. Just want to say who was absolutely correct. That was smoke and mirrors, and that wouldn't happen.
Yeah,
yours truly.
You are.
Just another. I'm very giving myself a pat on the back today, Jay Smith. So humble me if you want to.
Oh no, you got it.
But no, I think Reddick's a perfect fit. I think he hasn't been too far removed from the game to where he understands how to handle players and teammates and things like that, while also possessing that in-game knowledge. And like with any new coach, it's just going to depend on his staff around the edges in the margins.
Yeah, that's totally fair. He's very adaptable. My thing is, if you can play in the NBA for 15 years and you understand how to adjust your game to stay in it, then you understand how the league changes. And so I think he'll be on top of how the league is going to change over time, because it changes every year. Here's the scenario, though, that I wanted to throw your way. How funny would it be? Because, look, I don't believe LeBron when he says that he's not going to go play with his kid. Like, he said from the moment that this was even possible that he wanted to play with his son. If the Phoenix Suns draft Bronny James and LeBron leaves after getting JJ Reddick the job, that's got to be one of the funniest NBA things ever, right?
So Bill Simmons is evil for this, but he put it in the idea of the of the masses to draft Bronny as trade bait.
Mm-hmm.
And that hurts me because I am super excited to see. I think the Lakers take him if no one else has any funny business. And then with that, I think I am super excited to see how JJ builds a roster and deals with it. But yeah, Bronny going to the Suns would just be a Brian Windhorst. He would have no idea what to do with himself. He would be on SportsCenter 33 hours a day.
He would be. I think it'd be great because, like, you know, Clutch and them, like, they're trying to do everything they can to get Bronny to the Lakers. Part of that is saying he's only going to work out for these two teams. Part of that is saying LeBron's not going to leave. And so, like, I know the Mavericks want him. I know that the Suns are obviously intrigued by him, and obviously the Lakers do. Those kind of seem like the big three. And I just think it'd be so funny if he left after getting JJ Redick hired. But we'll see.
Do you think that a team would I don't want to say throw away a draft pick, but would kind of reach or have a bigger picture in mind and kind of actually pull the trigger on that?
I think the Suns would.
That you do?
Yes, I do. Because they can only sign players to veteran minimums. And LeBron obviously, like, he qualifies for that. And look, who wouldn't want to pair LeBron James with Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal and Devin Booker?
I think the risk there is that you are obviously not your roster is obviously not a title winning roster. Are you so sure that something's going to shake out in your favor if you reach for a player like Bronny, where you may be able to get an actual contributor down the line? Maybe, you know, Bronny's hype is directly tied to his father. People are still questioning his game. I just don't know if organizations are going to see that risk assessment and pull the trigger, but it's the NBA, so I could be wrong. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm with you. I am over, but I'm going to ask you one more question before I let you go. What do you have an opinion on Caitlin Clark and just her season and everything that's kind of going on there?
Yeah, I think it's just new for all of us, and we don't know how to react to it yet. Once this settles down, and once we start to understand the game a little more, I think this all calms down. But it's so new; everybody wants an opinion, and yeah, I love Caitlin Clark. Think she's going to be a great player, and I think people are just kind of shocked at the coverage so far. Okay, fair enough. ZG, thanks for your time. Follow him on Twitter at ZG the Grapevine. He posts picks there. Go to the link in his bio for his Patreon. He posts bets that wins. I wouldn't have him on if he didn't. ZG, thanks for your time, man. See you, Jay Smith. Thank you. See ya. That's going to do it for the Real Jonathan Smith Show this week. No Dan Dockett Show. The Jim Rome Show is coming your way next. I hope you enjoyed the show. Subscribe to the YouTube at Indies Sports Ticket. Follow us on Twitter at Sports Ticket at Indie Sports Ticket or at 1430 Ticket. Jeez, Jonathan. Follow me on Twitter as well at __ Jonathan Smith. I hope you have a great weekend. I'm going to go kick some butt in some pickleball probably tonight and tomorrow. Can't wait. I hope you guys have a good weekend. I will talk to you on Monday. Dan Dockett is also back Monday, but coming up next, it is the Jim Rome Show.